If you could just introduce yourself,
Sure.
your role and your relationship to Mary's Place, and how you got involved with Mary's Place.
Sure. My name is Bob Hurlbut, and I am the director of the Ellison Foundation. And we are based in Bellevue, and I've been here for 10 and a half years, and first got involved and got acquainted with Mary's Place back in 2015. We have a matching program for employees who work in the same office space that I do, and there was a person who had given I think a gift of $25 to Mary's Place, and it kind of just triggered something in my brain that I had heard of Mary's Place, didn't know much about it. A church I attended, I think acted as a temporary shelter as part of the rotation. But they had been involved with raising funds and supplies for Mary's Place. So it was kind of that gift of $25 that got me interested and curious. And then I paid a visit to Mary's Place in the first quarter of 2015.
Right. So do you have a favorite memory with Mary's Place, like a favorite interaction or moment?
No, I think the most powerful memory when I look back at my time of interacting with Mary's Place was the first visit. It was to the Women's Day Center on 9th and Stewart. And interesting times, homelessness was starting to be more and more visible to people in the Seattle community. And the thing that I was struck by was if you go to the Women's Day Center, I mean, it's a godsend to the women who use it, but it is no great shakes. It is go down the stairs into a windowless basement where you'll have lots of women taking advantage of it. And they have a kitchen, they have a respite room, they have all these different services available to them. And that's where Mary's Place's offices were in the same place. And I was just struck by that the whole south end of Lake Union was exploding with tech money and buildings and business. And I was thinking to myself, so this is the best we can do, huh? And the great thing about Marty and the staff was like, no, this was home. This was like the best thing going. And you looked around and the contrast between what I saw at Ninth and Stewart and what was happening outside just was mind blowing to me.
Yeah. What impact did you see Mary's Place having in the general community?
The biggest thing that Mary's Place, in my mind, has brought was safety and dignity to those most in need, especially vulnerable women. And then, as you know the story, that's all they ever wanted to be was a day center. And then all of a sudden, women started showing up with their children. And that's how they grew into providing temporary shelter at churches and then their own buildings. But what I think the greatest thing that Mary's Place has provided was always a keen sense of what the real needs were, and then making the adjustments to meet those needs. The issue with those in poverty will always be with us. The question is, always will be, how will we respond? And what's our, what kind of impact will we have? And Mary's Place has responded not only to those most vulnerable, they were a shelter that had barriers so that women felt safe there, and not all shelters were like that and day centers were like that. So they provide safety, they treated the women with dignity, and as time went on and there were more needs in the community, they adjusted significantly, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And you talked about this a little in your answer just there, but over your time working with Mary's Place, how have you seen the organization change?
Well, I think it has gone from very much a grassroots, faith-based supported organization to opening up its doors to support from major businesses. I mean, I used to have this conversation with Marty in the very early days, and Christy Tollner, just about the idea that Mary's Place is really a compelling mission when you look at it. Who doesn't want to help a mom and her two kids get out of a car and into a warm place where they can get food and services? Everybody does, but so few. I mean, lots of people knew about it, but we once did a little digging and found that when we were first meeting with them back in 2015, Mary's Place had 3,100 donors, and the average gift was $300. And so there was a lot of support in the faith-based community, and they were just doing the best with what they had. But the problem was becoming so big that we needed, the area needed significant partners to step up. And that's where back in 2016, you see Starbucks getting involved and Amazon playing a huge role. And it has just, changed dramatically. On one hand, in the sense of growth, I think when we worked with them, the budget was right around $2.5 million. Now it's getting close to 30. And so you see the changes. And so there's huge changes. But on the other hand, it's still the same services. It's still the same thing about safety, about dignity, about getting families back to self-sustainability. So in some ways, the mission hasn't changed, but how they go about delivering on that mission has changed dramatically, as in scary.
Yeah. So my last question for you today is, what was one event, or if you can't think of one, a time period or multiple events that you think are particularly important to the history of the organization?
I think there's a couple of instances, but there's one that really stands out, is that we had gotten involved, like say 2015. We gave a gift, a significant gift, a gift that, and I say this not for a pat on the back, but somewhere in the range of $65,000 towards nutrition. And with an average gift of being $300, they weren't necessarily, those kind of gifts didn't just happen all the time. Great, glad to help out. It was a very specifically directed. The following year, we upped our grant to $100,000. And at that time, we say it was the largest gift that they had received. And so that was fine. I say that for context, because 3 months later, they got $1 million grant from Amazon. And then the game changed. And then the partnership, I think for Mary's Place, when they were great stewards with an old motel that Amazon owned and that they gave them, and I forget the guy's name with the real estate, who was in charge of real estate for Amazon, that relationship grew, but that was a significant turning point for who Mary's Place is in 2023, back in 2016. When your average gift at that point was $300, and then someone's giving you a gift for $1 million, that'll change things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So that's all the questions that I've written down.
That's great.
But if you have any other like memories or moments or anything else that you want to contribute to this interview, you can go ahead and tell me.
Well, no, I think it's kind of just along the lines of what I said before. As the director of a foundation, and I'm interviewing lots of nonprofits, and who are doing amazing interventions, regardless of the cause or the population they serve. One of the things that I try to discern when I'm going into a nonprofit is, what's their motivation? What's in it for them? Because that's the filter they use when they make decisions about how they want to serve. Some people in the nonprofit world, although they want to help, intervention to deal with an issue, sometimes their motivations are not the clearest. With Mary's Place, I have never doubted by why Marty Hartman or Christy Tollner or Allison Moon have done what they've done. That it really has been about those most in need, those most vulnerable, and how do we get them back to self-sustainability and power. So that has always been true. Now getting there and capacity building and organizational charts and who's doing what has been a challenge. But at the heart of it, the motivation has always been there, and it has always been with such great integrity and authenticity and how they've helped folks.